do a rehearsal, brief rehearsal, like maybe a minute before the show starts. So I thought that's what was happening. So I froze, or I wasn't fully in tune with the show. Maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. Who cares? All right, Minneapolis, there's so much going on right now. There's been so much going on for the past couple of weeks. The Trump administration has made some very major strategic changes here in Minnesota. Border Czar Tom Homan is likely on the ground right now, if not on his way here. The White House press secretary said yesterday that he was hopping on a plane yesterday. I've been in touch with the White House and with Mr. Homan. We just can't confirm his whereabouts right now. We are tracking that and we'll keep you updated. That's a really big change because Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bavino has been here on the ground for the past couple of weeks and really has been leading a lot of the operation, especially for Border Patrol, because obviously that's the agency he's with. And he has now been relieved of this assignment. He's heading back to be the sector chief in Southern California. So that's a really big change, signaling that there could be some major movement in terms of how the federal government is going to operate moving forward here. And by the way, yes, if you have questions, please ask me. Are people protesting Tom Homan's arrival? I'm sure they are. You know that anti-ICE activists dislike Tom Homan basically as much as they dislike Greg Bavino. But what's notable is that Tom Homan used to work for the Obama administration, and President Obama gave Homan some type of medal. My producer Madeline's with me in the car. So that's an interesting dynamic. Someone who's so hated and called a Nazi under the Trump administration was actually celebrated under the Obama administration for basically doing the same job, which is my understanding. But if you guys have other questions, just keep texting them. Yes, I'm sure now we will see the demonstrators and the anti-ICE activists chanting against Tom Homan. A presidential rank award for distinguished service is what Tom Homan was given by President Obama, according to a quick internet search. So Tom Homan on his way here. Now, why is that notable? A, because Bavino's been relieved of his duty here. He hasn't been fired, but he's no longer the boss here. And also, Tom Homan and Greg Bavino, as Fox has previously reported, my friend and colleague Bill Maluzhin reported that Bavino and Homan have different outlooks on how things should be done on the streets and how immigration enforcement should be handled. Bavino sides more with Kristi Noem, with senior White House advisor Stephen Miller, in terms of what are considered more aggressive, in-your-face tactics, casting a very wide net, stops on the street, those types of things. That got a lot of attention in Los Angeles when it first began. They were carrying that out here. What has the Trump administration said about Bavino's departure? Okay, initially yesterday, Caroline Leavitt said that Bavino would remain on the ground here, but then later afterwards, we have confirmed that Bavino has been relieved of his assignment here. I believe he might be leaving today. So that's what the White House has said. But the Department of Homeland Security is noting that there's rumors out there that Bavino was fired entirely, that he's been relieved of his duty entirely. They're saying not true. He's going back to be the sector chief in California. Bavino's also been on the road. He was in Los Angeles. He was in Chicago. He was in New Orleans. He's been on the road for months and months and months and months. Maybe he's looking forward to getting back home and being the sector chief there. But if you have more questions, you can ask. But so Bavino and Tom Homan have different styles of how they want to get things done. And so it's going to be interesting to see what this change results in here on the ground. Tom Homan is more a fan of targeted enforcements, going after the bad guys, making swift, organized arrests. Not that DHS wasn't, because a lot of what they were doing was these targeted enforcements and then running into protesters who were impeding them or countering them. Has Minnesota leaders reacted to this switch in power? What Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have said is that they've had these fruitful phone calls with the president. Mayor Frey insists that some of these agents are leaving and he's going to keep fighting until they're all gone. We'll see if that plays out, but that is what he has said about the change in stance with the Trump administration. I don't know if they directly commented on the switch in power, but that is a good question, and we will look out for them making any comments about the change. One thing that is notable is that the president said that Tom Homan is scheduled to meet with Mayor Frey today. So I'm sure both Frey and Homan will have something to say afterwards about this big change in command. But, as soon as it was announced yesterday that the president was sending in Tom Homan, here on the ground, we knew, okay, this is a very significant approach, a very big change, a lot of movement coming from the Trump administration. Bovino out, Homan in, and what will that look like moving forward? Also, there's reports out there that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem had a very long meeting with the president yesterday. Has President Trump given a call back since his call with Walz yesterday? I'm not sure. I think there's probably so much happening behind the scenes right now. We're tracking it all. We just don't have anything confirmed to report to you. But I bet you by the end of the day, afternoon, we're going to have some information for you. I am certainly staying in touch with as many players as possible. But Mayor Frey and Walz both seem to indicate that things are moving in the right direction, that they're going to kind of work together. President Trump made it clear, we want all of the criminals that you guys have in your possession. If you follow this at all, you know that the backdrop to all this is a sanctuary city, sanctuary state. Governor Walz and the local jurisdictions here under Governor Walz's order do not cooperate with ICE detainers. So now the president made it clear in his Truth social post, we want everybody. Is that going to happen? We'll see. An interesting thing that my colleague Bill Belusian also points out and other analysts point out is that Governor Walz claims that he hands over, criminals to the Trump administration, but my understanding is those are only convicted criminals, who have done their time, have been convicted here in state courts. Then we'll give them to the Trump administration. But what the Trump administration wants is they'll place a detainer on somebody who may be released on murder, not convicted. This happens in Chicago a lot too. People are charged with multiple shootings, multiple offenses, and the Trump administration says, hold them. We want them now. Forget going to trial. Forget the conviction. We want them now. That is really the essence of the issue here. So that's what the Trump administration wants. Another question is developments on this fraud during this, or is that taking a pause at the protests? I spoke to a source within the state's attorney's office here when I first got on the ground, which was weeks ago, and that source told me that the fraud investigations are moving forward, that we can expect to see some updates on that soon. But then there was the issue where I think at least 6 of the state's attorneys in the Minnesota office, tried to resign, and the Pam Bondi said she fired them. So I guess we'll see if that does kind of have any impact on announcements of indictments. Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Todd Blanche, I did an interview with him a couple weeks ago. He said no. He goes, those 6 leaving is not going to stop anything. We're moving full speed ahead. See you later. So we'll see, if those 6 who stepped aside will put a pause on the investigation. But for all intents and purposes, we believe that the fraud investigations are moving ahead. And don't be surprised if there's updates there in days or weeks to come. It may not be the big fish at first. It could be some of these smaller learning centers, if you will, some of the smaller organizations, but the federal government is moving ahead. In fact, the Trump administration sent in additional federal prosecutors, to assist the U.S. Attorney's Office here, because the Trump administration wants prosecutors who are aligned with the Trump agenda on the ground here investigating the fraud. So from my understanding, I bet you that we'll have updates on that fraud soon. And of course, immigration is a huge issue, but the fraud is equally as important, and it's happening. Has Kash Patel made any statements on Minnesota leaders' accountability during these investigations? Meaning Governor Walz and Frey? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. I don't have Kash Patel's logs on me. I'm not sure. As far as accountability and stuff, you and I know that the Trump administration does not agree with how Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have spoken to their constituents here. Governor Walz, during a statewide special address, said that people are finding, quote, opportunities to resist. And he encouraged people to keep filming, to get their phones out and shoot ICE so that they could build a database to prosecute ICE in the future. That's something Walz keeps saying is going to happen. Literally going to, prosecute federal agents. Of course, Mayor Frey has said the same thing. They both say, protest peacefully, but then at the same time, they're saying keep doing what you're doing. And look, I mean, 3 people have been shot, 2 are dead here. So this is really, really serious. And it seems that even last night we had another issue. It was actually outside of Minneapolis, but once again, agitators surround a hotel. And Governor Walz and Mayor Frey don't really seem to acknowledge the violent demonstrations that are happening. These are turning into riots. I don't really recall Mayor Frey or Governor Walz stepping up to a mic and saying, look, demonstrate peacefully, the riots cannot happen, surrounding these hotels cannot happen. The messaging is kind of mixed there. How do you feel safety-wise covering these protests on the ground? I'm going to be honest with you. It gets dicey at times, okay? We're not going to lie. I mean, these agitators and anti-ICE activists hate us. They really do. They hate nearly all media. Not everyone, but they hate a lot of the media. They do not like law enforcement. They do not like anybody who's near them in eyesight, who's not aligned with them. They'll do everything, most of them will do everything they can to agitate you, to bother you, to get you out of the way, to insult you, all that. So Fox is wonderful. We have security almost all the time. Fox takes safety seriously, and we thank them for that. So usually, we have an extra body or two to, keep us safe. But in general, I have to say, here in Minneapolis, I've been surrounded by agitators on camera at least 3 times, maybe more. It's very frequent, going all the way back to, I don't know, there was the Trump rally that turned violent. There was that one, which is 2019. Then there was the one on the highway after, was that St. Paul? 2016, I was surrounded by agitators here. That ended up on Bill O'Reilly's show. So there is a well-organized, network here of activists, and they are really showing their skills right now, because it is being exposed that they're using, Signal and all this type of online messaging to communicate with each other, to identify who's doing what, who's trailing, who's, where everybody is. It's a full-blown network. And, I've said this before, but the license plate of one of our rental cars ended up on one of these anti-ICE databases. So at least 2 or 3 times now, we've had people come up to us and take pictures of our car, telling us point blank, we're taking pictures of your license plate. We're going to put it on the database, because a lot of times they think we're law enforcement, because we just have, generic unmarked rental SUVs. And so people confuse us for law enforcement, or they think we're ICE or this and that. So have to say, well, look at the response. In LA, there was the riots. In Chicago, there was the demonstrations for weeks and months, but nothing has really risen to the level that it has here in Minneapolis, right? I mean, there is a well-oiled anti-ICE, anti-Trump administration network here, and it's showing its face. And, when we're out with Border Patrol, just the sighting of Border Patrol or ICE, people immediately rush around them, form basically a mob around them, start blowing those whistles, then more and more people rapidly show up. So it just shows you how quickly people are ready to respond, how well-oiled the machine is here. So sometimes it is scary, but look, we're journalists, and this is what we sign up for. We come to these stories because we want to cover them. We want to give you guys the information on the ground, so this is what we do. And if you don't like it and you can't handle it, then you shouldn't be here, at least on this particular story. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. But in general, so many things like unfolding and evolving right now. That meeting with Tom Homan and Mayor Frey, I mean, so much can come out of that, and we will keep you updated. We're certainly keeping track of it all. Actually, I have to say, all things considered, the streets of Minneapolis in general are peaceful until someone spots Border Patrol or ICE. Then those flare-ups happen quick. Those mini riots happen quick. But in general, there's been like a designated protest site out at the federal building that ICE has been using, the Whipple building, which is basically near the airport. That's daily where protesters show up and taunt and agitate. But that aside, the little pop-ups happen when someone spots immigration agents somewhere. It's not like there's this citywide demonstration happening. But during George Floyd, there was, right? I mean, my producer Mal was with me. We were actually, and this is not even funny, but it's true, we were following the smokestacks around the city as we were reporting live. We'd say, oh, there's a giant black plume. Let's go over there. There's probably a building burning down there. And there was. I mean, we watched entire businesses burn to the ground without fire responding, without police responding. It was surreal. during George Floyd. This city literally was on fire. We watched quarters burn to the ground. So this is different, and thank God it has not escalated to that level. It's remarkable that it hasn't. Looks like someone else might be typing in another question. Yeah, so my producer Madeline Firsty, she and I have covered Minneapolis extensively, it's very cold too. It really is. A lot of people may not want to roam the streets at night, although we do see the agitators at the hotels. So, but yeah, Minneapolis is a really, really interesting dynamic because you had this ultra progressive, left-leaning city council that spearheaded the defund police movement. That led to all these other municipalities and cities also trying to, quote, defund and dismantle police, and that failed miserably. Have agitators continue to register for temp license plates and blocking law enforcement? Agitators are absolutely registering license plates. I think the last check, we have located some of these websites, and they're not hard to find. I think the last check was 3,000 or 4,000 license plates that were registered. The problem is they're obviously not all accurate. They identified us as ICE, which again, I understand maybe why. We're dressed professionally. We have an unmarked SUV, but they think they misidentified us as ICE. And what's unfortunate is we had, a generic white SUV. So if a family gets that afterwards, a family with kids, might they be trailed? Now, the organizers will tell you that's not meant to inflict violence on the driver of that car. It's meant to signal, people in the neighborhood, ICE is here. But I have some skepticism about that, because I think if some angry agitators see your SUV and that SUV license plate is in the database, I would be curious to see what they're going to do to you. Are they blocking law enforcement with cars? I saw personally, and a lot of this is on my social media. When I first got here a couple weeks ago, yes, I saw a person get into their car, drive into the middle of a intersection, and purposely block in agents. And this was while agents were very, very active. They started screaming, we're blocked in. So they screamed at that person, ordered that person to move their car. Fortunately, that person complied, but I've absolutely seen agents blocking cars, or cars blocking agents. And if you go online, it seems like there's been some other instances out there. And I was shocked to see everything that happened with Renee Good, people up here still using their cars. So I saw it a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure if it's still happening, but it would not surprise me. Hopefully the temperature is starting to cool down with everything now with Governor Walz and Mayor Frey saying that they're working with the White House. And it would be remarkable if Governor Walz did concede in some way and allow detainers in this state. And, the White House points out all the time, look, we don't have this issue in Texas. Border Patrol told me we didn't have this in New Orleans. Locals were working with us. So not only do the locals not work with the feds here, you also have a deeply ingrained anti-Trump network in Minneapolis and Minnesota that is fired up. Interesting, too, is after the tragic shooting on Saturday of Mr. Preddy, which is under investigation, one of those quick no-go zones popped up, which, those like autonomous zones that we saw in Seattle and that we also saw here for quite some time in George Floyd Square. And George Floyd Square was quite interesting because they had signage, rules to enter. These renegades, vigilantes, creating their own laws, right? And there was a particular set of rules, and this is on my Twitter as well, or X, whatever you want to call it, for white people. If you're white, here's a particular set of rules for you to enter this autonomous zone, this lawless zone. So I thought maybe that would gain a little more traction after the shooting of Mr. Preddy, because that no-go zone popped up. But fortunately, that was dismantled, and it seems like the demonstrators moved on. Now, the National Guard was briefly enacted here Saturday, too. Mayor Frey requested it from the state. The state did enact it. They formed a perimeter around the shooting site, and that calmed things. No major buildings burned or anything like that. It seems like things could be on the mend here. Perhaps, Governor Walz will comply with the detainers. But the truth of the matter is, the enforcements, the targeted enforcements, they're still happening in many states coast to coast. They're still happening here. And so if these agitators see them, you can expect some little flare-ups, some little pop-ups of, maybe riots. And it seems like these agitators are not going to stop surrounding the hotels where they think immigration agents are. So that might keep being a thing. But what's notable is last night it happened, one of the demonstrations happened in Maple Grove, which is a suburb. And it ended differently because Maple Grove made 26 arrests. And they put out a statement saying, we comply with the state. We comply, or we partner with state police. So state police came in, made arrests, done. That's different from what we've been seeing in Minneapolis. I mean, usually the agitators can go on for quite some time, do a decent amount of damage, and then maybe get arrested. Okay, my name is correspondent Matt Finn. A lot of what I just talked about is on my X and on my Instagram. Lots of videos. You could see everything that I just chatted about. You could DM me if you have any questions or any information. Thank you for listening to me blab on. And I hope you have a great, safe, warm day. Okay.